Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I would like to bring you back in time to 1901. So 1901 was just before Henry Ford founded his company. Cars were kind of weird back then. But in that very same year, a group of French artists were asked to envision the future in 100 years, in the year 2000. They came up with pretty good pictures. They well predicted, for example, the automation in agriculture. They well predicted technology entering our homes. And they invented Roomba 100 years ago. But then, if you look at the field of mobility, they did some very weird things. They were envisioning flying firemen, buses that would go underwater, attached to whales. How weird that is. Or flying police. So they really missed something. They for sure missed this. They missed the prominent role of cars in our society. But most importantly, they missed this. So this is a visualization of Lisbon. The plots here in real time, thousands of data points coming from the mobility system in Lisbon. So we have today a technology that is entering our physical space. Bits are converging with atoms. And with technology, with digital data, we can explore cities from a different perspectives and understand how to improve them. So we do exactly this at the MIT Senseable City Lab. We are a group of 40 researchers from many different backgrounds. And we try to anticipate those changes in cities and look at the impact on them. So if you change city, you get this. This is New York, JFK, the airport. Every yellow point is a taxi pickup. Every blue point is a taxi drop-off. If you zoom it out, you see the old city. And it's impressive how dense the data. There is only 1 year of data. And here we got a question. The question was, as we have so many trips from one point to the other, can we share some of them? If two people are going more or less in the same direction, can we improve the system to serve those two trips with the same car? Well, when you try to do some of these problems, you need a new kind of mathematics. And so we got some researchers coming up with an algorithm. And the result was impressive. Taxi trips can be shared up to 95%. So just imagine taking out one car and the impact on traffic, on transport, and on air quality. So a good story here. We published the result, and then the New York Times made an article saying, well, this is a very good academic result, but you know, New Yorkers don't like to share anything. How can you convince 95% of people to share? But then, again, that was a wrong prediction. Because after this, we get a phone call from Uber saying, thank you very much. Because the idea of sharing was in the air, but that was the first technical feasibility study. And then Uber launched Uber Pool that does exactly this. And we know that in most American cities, Uber Pool gets more trips, shared trips, than normal Uber. And that was possible with this technology. Now we are partnering with Uber, trying to extend this and understand what is the minimum number of cars that we actually need in a city. But if you change perspective here, you see that also cars are becoming computers on wheels. And we were thinking different ways of understanding how can we understand better the city from the point of view of the cars? How can the car monitor better our infrastructure and the people driving? And then something happened. This. I know that many of you are familiar with this. This happened a year ago. An Italian bridge collapsed out of the blue. And we know that in history, many of these cases happened. This is the Tacoma Bridge in the 60s in the US. But most importantly, this is an example from Boston. This is a bridge just in front of MIT. And at one point, they discovered a crack in the bridge. Little they knew that that crack caused 10 years of maintenance work. Just imagine of diverting all the traffic, the impact on the city. So the bottom line here is that our infrastructure is becoming very old. So how do we maintain bridges today? Well, we normally send people to inspect them once or twice per year, or we installed sensors. And this is on the right picture. Sensors can record accelerations of the bridge, vibrations, because vibration tells us a lot on the structural properties on the bridge and on their health. The fact is that if you want to deploy it on every single bridge, it's extremely expensive. You need to install sensors, bring electricity, connect them to the internet, and costs thousands of dollars for each bridge. So it's very hard to scale it up. But if you think about it, we have a sensor in every pocket, our cell phone. And driving on bridges, you get a lot of data, millions of data, just from cell phones in cars on bridges. So we are a research lab. That was a good question for us. So we decided to see if it actually makes sense. So we equipped a car with some cell phones. We went on a very famous bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, and we acquired some data. So we drove back and forth, 100 times. That's me on the car, going back and forth, acquiring data. But the good news is that going back to the lab, analyzing this data, we discovered that, yes, it's possible, just using our current infrastructures, our cars, our cell phones, to get a knowledge on the bridge vibrations, and from that, understand if the bridge is healthy or not healthy. So that's what we envision, to use our current technology just to change a little bit of the paradigm and looking at mobility instead of a way of bringing us from A to B, to actually help the city. But if you just take a jump into the future, we know that autonomous mobility will really revolutionize everything, from the way we build cars, the way we experience them, infrastructure, insurance, but most importantly for us, it's the way that cars are going to hit the roads, how cities will become test beds for experimenting what is going to be the impact of self-driving cars, of autonomous mobility, on the city. If you look at one very specific example, is this. So this is an intersection. And we know that intersections are very interesting places in the city, because two different entities, two different cars, are competing for the same space. How do we solve them? With traffic lights. But in the future, when cars will be coordinated, an intersection will probably look like this. Don't try it yet. I was presenting this to an Italian politician. I'm not going to tell you the name, but he was originally from Naples, and he told me, well, what's new here? This is happening every day. But then, we are researchers, so instead of just trying to visualize it, we were asking, what is really the impact on the city? Does it make sense? Is it possible? So we took some real data in Singapore with real traffic, and we tried to model this, so to make a mathematical algorithm to make it feasible, but also to understand the impact in terms of timing, in terms of waiting for the cars, but also in terms of emissions. And with this, we could prove that it's actually better, both in terms of waiting time and in terms of emission. But then we were asked by the city of Amsterdam to try to imagine the future mobility in the city. And Amsterdam is a wonderful city, and we're really trying to rethink the role of autonomous mobility in that city. But then if you look at the city grid, you realize that there are more canals and waterways than roads. So can we really rethink the concept of autonomous mobility in a brand new way? Something like this. A mix of self-driving cars and boats to actually take advantage of the city form. So we came up with a new concept. We call them Robot, because they are robotic boats. The name is a little bit geeky, but it's MIT. and that was a whole new concept. So we had to engineer them. From the very beginning, we equipped them with different sensors, and we tried to understand which sensors make sense in that specific technology. Then we started to deploy them and to test them. This is the MIT swimming pool. So this is about a robot that is trying to follow a specific path in an autonomous way. We had to teach them how to avoid different obstacles, fixed obstacles, but also moving obstacles. And that's Wei, one of the researchers in the lab, who volunteered to be a moving obstacle. But then a part of the technology, the interesting thing is that how are you going to make it interact with the city? Does it make sense? So of course we're envisioning of moving people around, but also goods, maybe in a hybrid area. And then to serve some of the city needs. This is, for example, trash collections, which is a very big problem in Amsterdam. You can make them interact with the legacy infrastructure, bringing life to non-autonomous boats. Or then really created new pieces of infrastructure. This is, for example, an open-air market. Or whenever you have an emergency, whenever you need to evacuate people, to have these little guys, little boats, to act with a swarm intelligence and coordinate and making a temporary bridge. So those are just some of the examples that we could came up with. But I invite everybody here to think that we are really at a U-turn in terms of urban mobility. But not because there's a wall in front of us, because technology is actually opening up many new ways from our current infrastructure without waiting for the future to the very next future. But the most important thing to us is understand how this technology can cooperate with the city. So I invite everybody here to try to crack up these possibilities and understand how this will benefit your single city, your favorite city. And we're very happy to explore this with you. Thank you very much.